When most people hear the phrase saber-toothed tiger, a very specific image forms almost instantly. A massive cat, low to the ground, with impossibly long curved fangs jutting down past its jaw, stalking across an icy plain alongside mammoths and early humans. It's an image that feels familiar, almost mythic. But from a scientific perspective, nearly every part of that mental picture needs refinement. To begin with, saber-toothed cats were not tigers, and in many cases, they weren't even particularly close relatives of modern big cats. The term saber-tooth doesn't describe a single species or even a single lineage. Instead, it refers to a recurring evolutionary strategy, one that appeared independently multiple times across millions of years in different branches of carnivorous mammals. At its core, a saber-tooth is defined by one trait above all others: greatly elongated upper canine teeth, flattened side to side, and often reinforced with serrated edges. These teeth were not simply exaggerated versions of modern fangs. They represented a fundamentally different approach to killing prey, one that shaped the entire anatomy, behavior, and ecological role of the animals that carried them. The earliest saber-toothed predators emerged over 30 million years ago, long before grasslands, mammoths, or humans. Some of the earliest examples weren't even true cats. These early saber-toothed carnivores belonged to groups that would later go extinct entirely, leaving no living descendants. This is an important point. The saber-tooth form was so effective in certain ecological conditions that evolution arrived at it repeatedly, even in unrelated animals. Only much later did true saber-toothed cats, members of the cat family itself, appear. These cats evolved during a time when ecosystems were dominated by large, slow-moving herbivores, giant ground sloths, camels, horses, bison, and eventually mammoths and mastodons. Prey animals were massive, tough-skinned, and often well-defended. Speed alone was not enough. A predator needed a way to end the hunt quickly, before exhaustion, injury, or retaliation set in. This is where the saber-tooth strategy came into its own. Rather than suffocating prey through a prolonged throat bite, as modern lions and tigers do, saber-toothed cats appear to have specialized in precise, devastating killing bites aimed at soft tissue, particularly the neck, throat, and major blood vessels. Their canines were weapons of surgical lethality, not brute force. But these teeth came at a cost. Long, thin canines are fragile compared to the stout fangs of modern big cats. A poorly placed bite could snap a tooth, and for an animal that relied on them, that would likely mean death. As a result, saber-toothed cats evolved a suite of complementary traits: powerful forelimbs to restrain prey, wide jaw openings to accommodate the canines, and neck muscles capable of driving the teeth downward with controlled force. In other words, saber-toothed cats were not simply bigger cats with longer teeth. They were specialized predators, adapted to a very specific ecological niche, one that no longer exists today. By understanding this from the outset, we avoid a common trap. Saber-toothed cats weren't primitive versions of modern tigers. They were not evolutionary dead ends in the sense of being inferior. Instead, they were highly successful specialists, dominating their environments for millions of years, until the world around them changed. And that changing world is where the real story begins. By the time saber-toothed cats reached their peak, the world they inhabited looked nothing like the primeval forests of their distant ancestors. We are now firmly in the late Cenozoic, especially the Pleistocene, a period defined by climatic instability, advancing and retreating ice sheets, and ecosystems built around large-bodied animals. This is the era most people associate with saber-tooths, and for good reason. It's when the most famous members of the group lived, hunted, and ultimately disappeared. The best-known saber-toothed cat is Smilodon, a genus that lived from roughly 2.5 million years ago until about 10,000 years ago. Smilodon was not a single species, but several closely related ones, spread across North and South America. Despite its popular depiction as a sleek, tiger-like predator, Smilodon was actually remarkably stocky. It had a short tail, a broad chest, and forelimbs that were disproportionately powerful, more like those of a bear than a modern cat. This anatomy tells us something crucial about how Smilodon lived. It was not a long-distance runner. It did not chase prey across open plains the way a cheetah does, or even the way wolves might. Instead, Smilodon appears to have been an ambush predator, relying on concealment, short bursts of strength, and overwhelming grappling power. Once it made contact, its massive forelimbs likely pinned prey in place, allowing a carefully delivered killing bite with those iconic canines. But Smilodon was not the only saber-tooth, nor was it representative of them all. In Eurasia and parts of Africa, another lineage dominated, Homotherium, often referred to as the scimitar-toothed cat. Unlike Smilodon's long, dagger-like fangs, Homotherium's canines were shorter, broader, and more curved, less fragile and possibly better suited for repeated use. Its body plan was also very different. Homotherium had longer legs, a sloping back, and proportions suggesting greater endurance and mobility. This implies a distinct hunting strategy. Many paleontologists believe Homotherium was capable of group hunting, perhaps cooperating to bring down large prey in open or semi-open environments. Fossil evidence places Homotherium across a vast range, from Europe and Asia to North America, making it one of the most geographically successful saber-toothed predators ever to exist. Even earlier still was Machaerodus, a genus that lived several million years before Smilodon. Machaerodus represents a more transitional form, bridging earlier saber-tooth designs with the extreme specializations seen later. Its fossils suggest a predator already committed to the saber-tooth strategy, but still retaining some features closer to modern big cats. What unites all of these animals is not just their teeth, but the world they evolved to exploit. The Pleistocene landscape was filled with prey animals that were large, numerous, and often slow to reproduce. Giant bison, camels, horses, juvenile mammoths, and ground sloths provided enormous caloric rewards, but also carried serious risks. A broken limb or prolonged struggle could be fatal to a predator. Saber-toothed cats solved this problem by evolving toward rapid incapacitation. Their killing technique was likely fast, precise, and devastating, minimizing time spent exposed to danger. This made them extraordinarily successful for long stretches of geological time. Fossil sites like La Brea tar pits show that saber-tooths were not rare or marginal animals, they were dominant predators in their ecosystems. And yet, dominance is not permanence. As climates fluctuated, prey populations shifted, and new competitors, particularly highly social hunters, entered the picture. The very specializations that made saber-toothed cats so effective would begin to constrain them. Their story is not one of sudden failure, but of gradual mismatch between an exquisitely tuned predator and a rapidly changing world. In the next segment, we'll step inside the body of a saber-toothed cat and examine how its anatomy worked as a system, and why those famous teeth could only function with everything else built around them. To understand saber-toothed cats properly, it's not enough to focus on their teeth alone. Those famous canines were only the visible tip of a much larger anatomical strategy. In reality, almost every major part of Saber-Tooth's body was shaped to support a single, high-risk action, delivering a precise, fatal bite without breaking its own weapons. Start with the skull. Saber-toothed cats had skulls that look deceptively familiar at first glance, but closer inspection reveals profound differences from modern big cats. The most striking feature is the extraordinary jaw gape. Modern lions and tigers can open their jaws to roughly 60 to 65 degrees. Saber-toothed cats could open theirs well over 100 degrees, in some species approaching 120. Without this extreme gape, their elongated canines would have been useless, colliding with the lower jaw before reaching the target. But a wide gape introduces a problem. It weakens bite force. When the jaw opens that far, the leverage of the jaw-closing muscles is dramatically reduced. Fossil reconstructions show that saber-toothed cats had relatively weak jaw-closing muscles compared to modern big cats. This is one of the most counterintuitive aspects of their biology. Despite their fearsome appearance, they were not bone crushers. They were not designed to clamp down and hold. Instead, they compensated elsewhere. The neck and shoulders of saber-toothed cats were massively reinforced. The cervical vertebrae show expanded attachment points for muscles that power downward and forward head motion rather than simple jaw closure. In effect, the killing motion was driven less by the jaws and more by the entire head and neck acting as a guided stabbing mechanism. The jaws opened wide, the head came down with controlled force, and the canines did the work. The forelimbs complete this picture. Saber-toothed cats had unusually thick, muscular front legs with robust joints and large claws. These limbs were not built for speed or endurance. They were built to grab, pin, and immobilize. Before a killing bite could be delivered, prey had to be restrained, ideally brought to the ground, and held still. This reduced the chance of struggling, twisting, or sudden movement that could snap a canine. Once restrained, the killing bite was likely aimed with great precision. Rather than biting through bone or crushing the throat, saber-toothed cats probably targeted soft tissues, the side of the neck, the underside of the throat, or areas rich in blood vessels. A single successful bite could cause rapid blood loss or catastrophic damage to the airway, ending the hunt quickly. This explains why saber-toothed cats often appear overbuilt in the front and underbuilt in the rear. Their hind legs were strong, but not optimized for long chases. Their tails were shorter than those of modern cats, reducing agility at high speeds but improving stability during grappling. Everything about their posture suggests an animal that expected the hunt to be decided within seconds, not minutes. It also explains why saber-toothed cats were so dependent on intact anatomy. A broken forelimb, damaged shoulder, or lost canine would have been disastrous. These animals were specialists in the truest sense. They traded versatility for efficiency, thriving in environments where large prey was abundant and competition favored decisive, short encounters. Seen this way, saber-toothed cats were not crude predators relying on oversized teeth. They were finely tuned biomechanical systems evolved to solve a very specific ecological problem. And for millions of years, that solution worked. In the next segment, we'll put this anatomy to the test by comparing it directly to how modern big cats kill and why evolution eventually favored a very different design. When we compare saber-toothed cats to modern big cats, lions, tigers, leopards, and jaguars, we're not just comparing extinct animals to living ones. We're comparing two fundamentally different solutions to the same problem: how to bring down large, dangerous prey without getting killed in the process. Modern big cats rely on a strategy that is, above all else, versatile. Their defining weapons are not elongated canines, but short, thick, conical teeth paired with extremely powerful jaw-closing muscles. These cats kill primarily through suffocation. After a chase or ambush, they clamp onto the throat or muzzle and hold on, using sustained bite force and body weight to cut off airflow or blood supply. The kill can take minutes, and during that time the predator must control a struggling animal. This approach demands endurance, coordination, and flexibility. Modern big cats are built accordingly. Their bodies are balanced rather than front-heavy. Their limbs are powerful but proportioned for both speed and grappling. Their tails are long, aiding balance during rapid turns and chases. Perhaps most importantly, their teeth are robust enough to tolerate mistakes. A lion can bite bone, crush vertebrae, or reposition its jaws mid-struggle without catastrophic damage to its teeth. Saber-toothed cats, by contrast, evolved toward precision over persistence. Their killing method appears to have been faster, but far less forgiving. Rather than clamping down and holding, saber-tooths likely delivered a single, carefully placed by design to cause rapid blood loss or catastrophic tissue damage. The elongated canines were not meant to endure twisting, pulling, or bone contact. Once embedded, they did their damage quickly, and the cat disengaged. This distinction shows up clearly in the skeleton. Modern big cats have skulls built for bite force. Saber-tooths had skulls built for gape. Modern cats have strong mandibles and reinforced jaws. Saber-tooths had relatively delicate lower jaws because the jaws themselves were not the primary source of killing power. Modern cats depend heavily on jaw muscles. Saber-tooths depended more on neck motion and forelimb control. Hunting behavior likely differed as well. Modern big cats are adaptable hunters. Lions cooperate in groups. Tigers hunt alone, but can adjust prey size based on availability. Leopards and jaguars exploit trees, water, and ambush terrain. This flexibility allows modern cats to survive in ecosystems with fluctuating prey populations. Saber-toothed cats appear to have been more ecologically constrained. They excelled when prey was large, slow, and abundant, conditions that defined much of the Pleistocene. But they were less suited to environments where prey was smaller, faster, or more dispersed. Their anatomy was optimized for a narrow window of opportunity, and outside that window, their advantages diminished rapidly. There is also a subtle but important difference in risk management. Modern big cats accept longer, riskier struggles because their anatomy can absorb damage. Broken canines are rare, and even a damaged tooth does not necessarily mean death. For a saber-toothed cat, a single miscalculation could be fatal, not immediately, but through starvation after tooth loss. In evolutionary terms, modern big cats represent a generalist strategy that favors resilience, while saber-toothed cats represent a specialist strategy that favors efficiency. Neither approach is inherently superior. Each dominated under the conditions that shaped it. But as environments changed, prey communities shifted, and competition intensified, resilience would begin to matter more than precision. In the next segment, we'll place saber-toothed cats into their broader ecosystems and examine who they competed with, and why those competitors may have had the edge. Saber-toothed cats did not rule empty landscapes. They were apex predators, yes, but they shared that status with a growing cast of rivals, many of whom approached the same ecological problem from very different angles. Understanding saber-tooths means understanding who else was hunting the same prey, feeding on the same carcasses, and adapting to the same unstable world. During much of the Pleistocene, large ecosystems supported multiple apex predators simultaneously. In North America alone, saber-toothed cats lived alongside dire wolves, American lions, short-faced bears, and packs of highly efficient scavengers. Eurasia and Africa hosted their own versions of this crowded hierarchy. The presence of saber-tooths at the top did not mean exclusivity, it meant constant competition. One of the most important distinctions among these predators was social behavior. Many of the saber-toothed cats, especially species like smilodon, are believed to have been primarily solitary or loosely social at best. Their anatomy, massive forelimbs, reliance on precision, vulnerability of their teeth, suggests hunting styles that favored individual ambush and control, rather than extended group chases. In contrast, some of their competitors relied on numbers. Pack hunting canids could exhaust prey over long distances, compensating for smaller size with coordination and endurance. Large bears, particularly short-faced bears, could dominate carcasses through sheer size and strength, often stealing kills rather than making them. These animals didn't need to be precise. They needed to be persistent. This difference mattered most after the kill. For saber-toothed cats, feeding likely involved a narrow time window. Their teeth were poorly suited for gnawing bone or processing tough hides, and prolonged feeding at a carcass increased the risk of confrontation. A single displaced saber tooth could mean starvation. As a result, saber-toothed cats may have been kill specialists but feeding generalists, forced to abandon carcasses earlier than competitors that could defend or consume them more efficiently. Then there is the arrival of the most disruptive competitor of all, Homo sapiens. Humans did not enter these ecosystems as just another predator. They arrived with tools, cooperation, planning, and most importantly, the ability to reshape landscapes and prey populations. Early humans hunted many of the same large herbivores saber-toothed cats depended on, but they did so using strategies that reduced risk. Distance weapons, traps, coordinated group drives, and scavenging backed by intimidation. Unlike saber-toothed cats, humans were extreme generalists. They could switch prey, environments, and tactics rapidly. If large herbivores declined, humans adapted. If climates shifted, humans migrated. Saber-toothed cats could do neither with the same flexibility. This doesn't mean humans instantly wiped out saber-tooths. For thousands of years, they coexisted. But in a world where prey numbers were already stressed by climate change, even small additional pressures mattered. Competition for carcasses intensified. The margin for error narrowed. Specialization became liability. What's striking is that saber-toothed cats didn't disappear because they were weak or inefficient. They disappeared because they were too good at a specific job in a world that stopped needing it. In the next segment, we'll follow that pressure to its conclusion and examine how climate change and prey collapse pushed saber-toothed cats past the point of recovery, not suddenly, but step by step. The decline of saber-toothed cats did not happen in a single moment, nor can it be blamed on a single cause. Instead, it unfolded gradually as a series of pressures accumulated over thousands of years. To understand this process, we have to zoom out and look not at the predator, but at the ecosystem it depended on, and how that ecosystem began to unravel near the end of the Pleistocene. The Pleistocene was marked by repeated glacial cycles. Ice sheets advanced and retreated, sea levels rose and fell, and vegetation zones shifted across continents. For long stretches, this instability actually favored saber-toothed cats. Large-bodied herbivores thrived in cold and cool climates, where slow reproduction was offset by abundant grazing land and reduced predation pressure on juveniles. These animals, bison, horses, camels, mastodons, mammoths, were exactly the kind of prey saber-tooths were built to kill. But as the Pleistocene drew to a close, the pattern changed. The transition into the Holocene brought warmer, more stable climates, shrinking ice sheets, rising forests, and fragmented open landscapes. Grasslands broke apart. Migration routes shifted or disappeared. Many large herbivores declined in number, range, or body size. Some vanished entirely. This mattered enormously for saber-toothed cats because their entire hunting strategy assumed large, predictable prey. Smaller, faster animals were harder to ambush and more dangerous to grapple. Forested environments reduced visibility and limited the effectiveness of the sudden, overpowering attacks saber-tooths relied on. In short, the world was becoming less compatible with their specialization. At the same time, prey populations were under pressure from multiple directions. Climate stress reduced available forage. Human hunters selectively targeted large animals, often the same individuals saber-tooths would have preferred. Even modest reductions in prey numbers could have cascading effects on predators that depended on high caloric returns from each successful hunt. For a generalist predator, this kind of ecological tightening is survivable. Diets shift, ranges expand or contract, behavior adapts. But for a specialist like a saber-toothed cat, the margin for adaptation was thin. Each failed hunt carried greater consequences. Each injury was more costly. Each lost tooth was more likely to be fatal. There is fossil evidence suggesting that toward the end of their existence, saber-toothed cats were already under nutritional stress. Some specimens show signs of healed injuries that imply prolonged survival after damage, possibly with assistance from social structures, but even that resilience had limits. As prey declined, recovery became harder. Reproductive rates likely fell. Populations fragmented. Importantly, this was not a dramatic collapse. There's no clear fossil signal of mass starvation or sudden extinction. Instead, saber-toothed cats appear to have faded out, disappearing from one region after another as conditions crossed a threshold they could not adapt to. By the time the Holocene fully took hold, the ecological niche saber-toothed cats had dominated for millions of years was gone. Large prey was rarer. Competition was fiercer. Environments were more complex. Precision killing of massive herbivores was no longer the winning strategy. In the next segment, we'll look at the final phase of the story by asking a difficult question. Why didn't saber-toothed cats adapt, and why did modern big cats succeed where they cannot? At first glance, the disappearance of saber-toothed cats raises an obvious question. If evolution is so effective at reshaping life, why didn't saber-toothed cats simply evolve into something else? Why didn't their teeth shorten, their bodies rebalance, and their hunting strategies shift to match the changing world? The answer lies in how evolution actually works, and just as importantly, how it doesn't. Evolution does not redesign organisms from scratch. It modifies existing structures gradually, generation by generation, under the pressure of survival and reproduction. The more specialized an organism becomes, the more its future options narrow. Saber-toothed cats were victims not of weakness, but of deep evolutionary commitment. By the time species like smilodon and homotherium dominated their ecosystems, the saber-tooth strategy was not a surface feature that could be easily reversed. It was embedded everywhere, in skull shape, jaw mechanics, neck musculature, limb proportions, hunting behavior, and even likely developmental timing. Shortening the canines alone would not have solved the problem. Without long canines, their wide, gaping jaws, reduced bite force, and grappling-heavy anatomy would have been inefficient compared to other predators already occupying those niches. In evolutionary terms, saber-toothed cats were trapped on a local peak. Within their specific ecological context, they were extremely well adapted. Small changes made them worse, not better. To reach a new adaptive peak, one resembling modern big cats, they would have had to pass through intermediate forms that were less effective at both strategies. Those intermediates would have been outcompete long before a new equilibrium could be reached. This contrasts sharply with the lineage that gave rise to modern big cats, the genus Panthera. These cats never committed as fully to a single killing strategy. Their anatomy remained flexible, teeth robust but not extreme, jaws powerful but not specialized for one angle, bodies balanced for both speed and strength. This gave them room to adjust as environments shifted. When prey became smaller or faster, Panthera cats could adapt their hunting behavior. When forests replaced open plains, they adjusted ambush tactics. When competition increased, some species became solitary, others social. Their success lies not in being the best at one thing, but in being good enough at many things. There is also the matter of time. The climatic and ecological changes at the end of the Pleistocene occurred relatively quickly in evolutionary terms. Saber-toothed cats may not have had enough generations under stable selective pressure to experiment their way out of specialization. By the time their populations were stressed enough to favor major anatomical change, their numbers were already too low for such change to spread. This highlights a broader principle in evolutionary biology. Success can be dangerous. Traits that dominate for millions of years can become liabilities when conditions shift. The very efficiency that once ensured survival can lock a lineage into a path with no exit. Saber-toothed cats did not fail to adapt because evolution stopped working. They failed because evolution had already worked too well. In the next segment, we'll turn to the fossil record itself and examine what evidence we actually have for saber-toothed behavior, separating what we know with confidence from what remains educated inference. Much of what we know about saber-toothed cats comes not from speculation, but from an unusually rich fossil record. Unlike many extinct predators known only from fragmentary remains, saber-toothed cats, especially smilodon, are represented by thousands of specimens, allowing scientists to move beyond guesswork and test ideas against physical evidence. One of the most important sources of this evidence is La Brea tar pits. Over tens of thousands of years, natural asphalt seeps trapped large herbivores, which in turn attracted predators. Saber-toothed cats were drawn in repeatedly, leaving behind an extraordinary concentration of bones. This site alone has yielded more smilodon fossils than all other locations combined. From these remains, several patterns emerge. First, injuries are common and often healed. Many saber-toothed cat skeletons show broken bones, joint damage, and even severe trauma that had clearly healed long before death. This tells us two important things. 1. Hunting large prey was dangerous, even for apex predators built for the task. And 2, at least some saber-toothed cats survived long enough after injury to recover, implying either remarkable individual resilience or some degree of social tolerance that allowed injured individuals to feed without hunting at full capacity. This has fueled ongoing debate about whether certain saber-toothed cats, particularly smilodon, may have had limited social behavior. While there is no direct evidence of structured social groups like those seen in modern lions, the survival of severely injured individuals suggests they may not have been strictly solitary in the way modern tigers are. Even loose associations or temporary tolerance at kills could have made the difference between life and death. Dental wear provides another critical line of evidence. Despite their fearsome size, saber-toothed canines show surprisingly little where compared to the teeth of modern big cats. This supports the idea that they were not used for crushing bone or prolonged biting. Instead, the teeth appear to have been used sparingly and carefully, consistent with a killing strategy that emphasized precision and rapid disengagement. Microscopic analysis of tooth surfaces and jaw joints further reinforces this picture. The wear patterns align with slicing soft tissue rather than grinding or cracking hard materials. This fits neatly with reconstructions of saber-toothed cats as predators that avoided unnecessary strain on their teeth and jaws. Even limb bones tell a story. The forelimbs show heavy reinforcement and stress markers consistent with powerful grappling, while the hind limbs show fewer adaptations for endurance running. This skeletal distribution mirrors the behavioral model inferred from skull and dental anatomy, creating a rare convergence of independent evidence. What's striking is how consistent these signals are across individuals and sites. While there was variation between species, Homotherium shows more cursorial traits than Smilodon. The underlying pattern remains the same. Saber-toothed cats were not opportunistic generalists. They were specialists whose bodies recorded the stresses of their lifestyle in bone, tooth, and joint. At the same time, the fossil record reminds us of its limits. Bones do not preserve behavior directly. They cannot tell us exactly how often saber-toothed cats hunted, how successful they were, or how they interacted socially in daily life. What they give us instead is constraint, a set of physical boundaries within which behavior must have occurred. Within those boundaries, the picture that emerges is remarkably coherent. In the next segment, we'll step back from extinction and mechanics and ask a more reflective question: why saber-toothed cats continue to captivate us, and what their story reveals about how we think about power, failure, and survival in deep time. Even among extinct animals, saber-toothed cats occupy a special place in the human imagination. Dinosaurs feel distant, almost alien. Ice Age herbivores feel monumental but passive. Saber-tooths, by contrast, feel personal. Predators we can imagine locking eyes with, animals that look almost familiar until something about them suddenly feels wrong. Part of this fascination comes from the tension they embody. Saber-toothed cats look overarmed, almost excessive. Their canines seem impractical, even reckless, as if nature pushed the design too far. And because they went extinct, it's tempting to interpret them as a cautionary tale, proof that specialization is dangerous, that excess leads to collapse. But this reading misses something important. For millions of years, saber-toothed cats were not mistakes. They were among the most successful large predators Earth has ever produced. They survived multiple climate cycles, spread across continents, and dominated ecosystems far longer than our own species has existed so far. Their extinction does not erase that success. It merely defines its boundary. What makes saber-tooths unsettling is that their failure was not dramatic or deserved. They did not disappear because they were outcompete in a fair contest of strength or intelligence. They disappeared because the rules of the game changed, and they were too perfectly adapted to the old rules to adjust in time. There is something deeply human in that story. We tend to think of evolution as progress, as a steady march toward better designs. Saber-toothed cats challenge that narrative. They remind us that evolution produces contextual solutions, not universal ones. A trait can be optimal for millions of years and then become a liability almost overnight. Success, in this sense, carries its own risk. It narrows imagination. Their anatomy also forces us to reconsider what power really means. Modern big cats appear more reasonable, more balanced. Saber-tooths look extreme, but that extremity allowed them to solve a problem with extraordinary efficiency. They didn't need long chases or prolonged struggles. They needed one moment of control, one precise motion. In a world built around massive prey, that was power distilled. The tragedy, if it can be called that, is not that saber-toothed cats were flawed. It's that the world stopped offering problems they were designed to solve. This is why saber-tooths linger in documentaries, museums, and fiction. They are not just predators from the past. They are symbols of a deeper truth about life in changing systems. Being the best at something is not the same as being adaptable, and the two are often in tension. In the final segment, we'll bring the story full circle, summarizing what saber-toothed cats were, what they were not, and how comparing them to modern big cats helps us understand both extinction and survival in a more nuanced way. When we step back and look at saber-toothed cats as a whole, the picture that emerges is far more nuanced than the caricature of an overbuilt predator doomed by its own excess. Saber-tooths were not evolutionary oddities, nor were they failed experiments. They were highly refined specialists, shaped by millions of years of selection to solve a very specific ecological challenge: how to kill extremely large, dangerous prey as quickly and efficiently as possible. They achieved this not through raw bite force, but through precision, restraint, and anatomical coordination. Their elongated canines were supported by wide gaping jaws, reinforced necks, and powerful forelimbs that immobilized prey before a single decisive bite. This was a system built for short encounters with high stakes, an elegant solution in ecosystems dominated by megafauna. In contrast, modern big cats represent a different evolutionary philosophy. Species in the genus Panthera are generalists. Their teeth are shorter but stronger. Their jaws are built for endurance rather than precision. Their bodies are balanced for speed, flexibility, and repeated attempts. They are not optimized for one kind of prey, but for surviving across many environments with shifting conditions. This difference explains why modern big cats survived the end of the Ice Age, while saber-toothed cats did not. As climate stabilized, landscapes fragmented, and large prey declined, versatility became more valuable than efficiency. The world no longer rewarded specialization at the extreme end of the spectrum. But this outcome should not be mistaken for a verdict on evolutionary quality. Saber-toothed cats were not inferior to modern cats. They were simply adapted to a world that no longer exists. In fact, for most of their history, they were arguably better at their job than any living predator is today. Their extinction reminds us that evolution has no foresight. It does not plan for future conditions. It optimizes for the present, and when the present shifts too quickly, even the most successful designs can fall behind. This is not failure, is the cost of commitment. Seen through this lens, saber-toothed cats become more than Ice Age curiosities. They are case studies in how specialization, success, and vulnerability intertwine. They show us that survival is not about being the strongest or the most dramatic, but about maintaining room to change. And perhaps that is why they still resonate. Saber-toothed cats sit at the intersection of dominance and disappearance, power and fragility. They ruled their world with surgical efficiency, and then quietly vanished when that world moved on.